I haven't talked to everybody in a while, so hello out there. A few things I'm going to go over. I'm going to talk a little bit of NHL. I'm going to talk a lot. I'm going to talk a few things about hoops and some lessons I've learned with hoops. I'm actually going to I'm going to talk about Vegas a little bit, and just what I'm doing this time of year. And I think everybody knows football and football investing. That's typically my forte, but I'll let everybody in on what I got going on at this time of year. So I'm going to start with Vegas. And I was in Vegas almost 2 weeks ago. And I made a decision while as I was on my way back that I don't really like betting in a sports book. And at this point, I'll tell you why. There's live betting that you can do through your app that you can't do in a Vegas sports book. And the sports books that I were at, well, I hit most of them. I mean, I was at Caesars, I did the Venetian. The Circa was the coolest place ever, and that's in downtown Vegas. That's the best sports book you could ever be in. But you're betting the game. I mean, you're betting over, under, or the spread or money line. There were no first half lines. There was no going back up to the window and betting the second half. It was just simply lay your action and walk away, and you have to stay there for 3 hours or you have to go back to collect your money. So I found myself sitting in Las Vegas and I'm betting on my app because, well, one, I can bet whatever I want. Two, I can bet live. And then, the other big piece is I don't have to go back and get paid. And I could take my payment through Bitcoin and catch a little bump there. So, there's all kinds of hype around with sports betting going legal. And I know we all talk stocks and DraftKings and everything else. I just as an avid sports bettor, I enjoyed betting on my app far better than I did going physically into a sports book. I don't know what effect that has on anybody and what they think of DraftKings and their tie into fantasy sports, but I personally don't believe in the sports betting and legalization of it as any type of driver long term for stocks. So I brought that up just because I think that there's a lot of people out there that are betting on sports that are going to find the same thing that I did, which that leads me into the next piece is the live betting and some of the plays that I've been doing. As you guys have seen, the last couple rounds of picks that I've put up on the page have not done very well. And that kind of speaks to how I've been laying my action and why I've been pretty silent. I'm doing a lot of live betting. Most of what I'm looking at pregame with the kind of sports that we're looking at. We're looking at basketball and we're looking at there's some FCS football, and really the only way to do FCS football is pregame action, and there's halftime lines too. But most of this FCS football doesn't have enough coverage on TV for the sports books to keep up with live betting. So FCS, you have to really know what you're doing in order to lay that action. But in basketball and even in hockey, unless you're betting an underdog, a money line underdog, or you think that your favorite is just absolutely going to blow away what is listed as the point spread, there's truly no reason to bet these games pre-game. There was games yesterday in basketball where the favorite was down by 13, and at that point, rather than lay the 8 points that you would have had to lay, you just take +2, and who cares if they even win? And there's a lot of examples like that, in hockey games where you see the favorite go down by 1, and now you can catch a money line rather than the initial having to lay 1.5. I've found a lot of winners that way. Yes, and I've had it yesterday. I had 17 plays, and I ended up going 13-4, and most of it was live action. The only couple games that I hit pregame was I hit the Edmonton Oilers pregame, and then I just kept jumping on it because of how quickly they were scoring goals. But again, the pregame or the in-game is the way to go with all of this stuff. So if you're looking at my picks, most of the picks that I'm putting up, at least the basketball ones, I'm getting them from some really smart basketball pickers. There's two guys out there that I could recommend for the group. I am not the best picker when it comes to basketball. I get my information from from people that I trust. John from GMF Sports. You can Google GMF Sports and you can find him. He's really amazing when it comes to his basketball plays. And then there's a guy out there that's also through Belly Up Sports. His name is Joey Betts. This guy in the past 2 weeks, about 75 to 80% of what he says actually turns into money. I talked to this guy for about a half an hour, and he walked me through how to make money off of the NBA All-Star game. And, I look at the NBA All-Star game and it's like, I don't know, it's a bunch of players. LeBron's the captain and Durant's a captain. And he told me the 4 points is a gift, take team LeBron. And I also had a prop bet on the MVP, which that ended up paying plus 550. And this guy told me exactly how to do it. It was he broke this game down the same way that I broke down the Super Bowl for everybody. So Joey Betts through Belly Up Sports or the Worldwide Sports Radio Network, and John from GMF Sports. These are guys that I take my picks advice from. I will tell you where I have found success in basketball. The University of Houston has been the most profitable team to wager on. Gonzaga, obviously, they haven't lost a game, but Gonzaga has it in them to sometimes go down early. Look for that. Anytime you see Gonzaga playing, look at the score. Even if they go down by 4 points, sometimes that's enough for an adjustment. But Gonzaga has gone down as much as 10, and they somehow come back to win by 12, win by 20. So always watch Gonzaga. The other one is the University of Houston. I've been betting a lot of overs on them. Anything that is anything under 75, I'm typically going to bet the over on Houston. The other place that's really good to look at overs, at least as of the past 3 or 4 days and going forward, is University of North Carolina. They're not getting enough point spread adjustment for the way that they're playing right now out of the odds makers. So I would recommend, when you're looking at North Carolina, don't lay points. I don't lay points on favorites or even take points on dogs in these basketball games. And I've been advised by some of these smarter guys I mentioned earlier, in these basketball games, if you like Baylor, minus 18, don't lay 18 points. Don't ever lay that many points in a game unless it truly makes sense. But in a basketball game, there's no reason to lay those points. What you do is you look at Baylor in the over, or you look at the total over. If you think Baylor is going to beat somebody by that much, well, they're going to have to score a certain amount of points in order to do that. Then the over is really what you should be looking at. And then when the other team scores some points, you're not mad at it. It's just contributing. Everybody gets a participation trophy, and they can all score points, and it'll help support the division. The other places that have been really paying well is Bama. I feel like I'm talking about football, but Bama's a really surprising one. In fact, I like Bama in some of the early rounds in the once we get to bracket time, because Bama's probably going to find themselves somewhere in a 2 or a 3 seed, which means once they get out of the first round, they're probably going to play a team where they may be an underdog. And we're probably going to see 2 Big Ten teams with number 1 seeds. I look for one of them, possibly both of them, to be out in the second round. These Big Ten teams are choke artists, and as much as it pains me to say it, Ohio State's probably the biggest one of all. I bleed Ohio State, not as much the basketball as I do the football, but Ohio State is probably going to go down early. The smart move, looking at them, would be to bet money line against them in every game until they lose, and just keep the units small, because they're going to go into every game as a favorite. The first and second game, they're probably going to go into those games like the opponent is probably going to be plus 300, plus 500. So I would advise bet against Ohio State. And I think Illinois is a little bit of a fake ID too. I would bet against them, and that's kind of my 2 cents for what I'm looking at with these college hoops plays. And I don't really have a ton after that. I'm going to go to NHL. These NHL teams are getting real tough. They're starting to hate each other because they keep playing 2 and 3 games in a row against the same opponent. The way that I've been playing the NHL is, if you want to play the favorite, you got to lay 1.5 points. you're not going to take the favorite for the money line because it only returns minus 230. There's no reason for it. And so what I'll do in these games where I want to play the favorite, I know who the winner is. You let the game get started. Not even a minute into the game, you're going to find a live play, and it's going to be minus 0.5 as the point spread, which is, the hook. It's just simply winning the game. But it has to happen in regulation time. That's the only catch, and that can burn you. That's almost worse than losing by the half a point. When they tie it up and then they go into overtime and they end up winning in overtime, but you needed it to happen in regulation. But if you bet it early enough, you'll probably get a fair number. That's the way that I play the favorites, because that'll usually be minus 115, minus 110. And then what's happening now is a lot of these teams in the NHL, they're most of these teams are splitting on the twofer. They're playing each other 2 games, and they usually split unless there's a total mismatch. And then the other way that I'm looking at games, when you look at the teams that are playing their second night in a row after travel, usually they get burned. Toronto is what I believe to be the best team in the NHL, and I think Edmonton's not far behind them. And Vegas is a different story. I'll talk about them in a second. But Toronto and really Montreal too, on their second or third night after a little bit of travel, they seem to sleepwalk through games, and they start to make really bad passes, and they just don't show up the way they should. So when you're looking at hockey games, take a look at how many games in a row have they had to travel before this second or third game. That really matters. And what's the other team doing? The goalies and the goalie change. I have made some mistakes on the goalies and goalie change. I kind of overvalued putting in the second string goalie, and I overlooked the fact that the team was coming off of a 3-day layoff, going against a team that had completely shattered dead legs because they played 3 games in a row against a team where there was 4 different fights that took place, and they're just completely drained. So you got to take a look at the travel with these NHL games. I still, long term, if anybody out there is looking for value on Stanley Cup winners, I believe Florida is still a valid play. I believe that Toronto, like I said, is the best team in hockey. The only trouble with Toronto in the playoff structure this year, the top 4 teams in that Canadian division is going to be Toronto, it's going to be Edmonton, Winnipeg, and possibly Montreal. But even the bottom teams like Vancouver and Ottawa, they're playing really hard. So in order for Toronto to find their way into a Final Four, they're going to have to walk a Canadian gauntlet. So I don't know that there's as much value there. Edmonton can beat any team in the league, and you probably find the most value. I think $100 bet to win it all probably returns $2,000 at this point. There's a lot of value there. As far as some of the other teams go, I don't really know that there's too many. I would throw Vegas out the window. I think Vegas is terrible. Everybody wants to like Vegas because they got cool uniforms. They've been in the Cup. I think Vegas is total garbage. They can win games. They can win games big. But just knowing hockey and watching the game, Vegas is not a very good team. And when they get down, they're even worse. They're worse with some travel. So I wouldn't waste my money on them. Vegas is on my no bet list, and I'm going to run through my most recent no bet list for the NHL. Vegas is number 1. Vegas is our Choklahoma. Just like in football, Choklahoma. Vegas is our K-State or TCU. But so there's Vegas. I will not touch the Boston Bruins. The Boston Bruins can show up and win 7-1. They can also show up and win 1-0. And there's no telling how they're going to do what they do. And they've had to replace a Hall of Famer on defense, and I don't think they found their identity on defense. So Boston is also on that list. The other one that's on the list is Montreal. Montreal is another one. They're a really good team. They have possibly the best goalie in hockey who's not playing like the best goalie in hockey. They have stars that they don't truly have star players, and there's no telling when they're going to light the lamp, although they could score 7 goals if they want to. But Montreal is also on my my no touch, and this I won't bet on them, and I won't bet against them. All three of these teams, and then the other one is the Anaheim Ducks. The Anaheim Ducks they can beat anybody. They can score goals if they want to, but their goalie can also allow 7 goals. So those 4 teams, I would advise staying away from them. And that's it. I'm just going to hit one more thing with hockey. The other bet that's really cool that's out there, and it's on Bovada, and I know a lot of you are. The bet is it's an all under or an all over, and it takes the slate of games for the day, and it allows you to bet over or under on the goals. And yesterday there were 5 games, and the over under was 29.5, which means that they were saying you were either betting that each game would average 6 goals over or under 6 goals, and it ended up being 30 goals. So the hook burned you if you were on the under, which but the way to read that, and I've hit it quite a few times, the way that you read that is look at all the games, look at the travel, look at the goalie, and more than anything, how many of those games were the second game of a twofer? And you'll find your answer. The second game of a twofer, in most cases, tends to be more goals. The first game of the twofer, they're feeling each other out, and if it's a team that was a lopsided game, the prior meeting, they end up roughing each other up, and the game's a lot more. So the second game of a twofer tends to be higher scoring goals. So that'll tell you how to play that all over or all under. I looked at it today, and I think the all over, I think there's 7 games, and I think the all over under was 58, and it's going to go over out of 7 games. I'm trying to think. You know what? I might be wrong about that number, but if you catch that all over to where it averages 5 goals, go over. Just go over. If it averages 6.5 goals, go under. If it averages right at 6, walk away. And it's a good way to play it, because then you're not stuck to any game. You're just looking at all these games, looking for goals, and it pays minus 110 on both sides. So you don't really need to dig in too much. There's just some easy things to look at. And you can get in on some hockey action. You watch whatever games on television. You don't have to force yourself to bet the only game that's on TV in your market. You can just bet the all over, all under, watch a game, cheer for some goals, and cash a ticket. So I don't really have anything else. The only thing I'll throw out there, if anybody wants live action, send me a message and just say, hey, I'm watching this game, and I'll try and send you some information. But as you guys have seen, the pregame picks that I'm putting up are not doing anybody any favors. In fact, it's probably costing you guys money. So I think what's best at this point is I come on here every week or every couple weeks and give you an update on what I see going on. And everybody's welcome to tune in to Sports Betting Weekly and listen to the broadcast. We give out picks on the show. Last week we gave out, I think it was 4 or 5 winners that cashed within an hour of the show being over. So there's action there. And again, those 2 dudes that I mentioned, they're nailing basketball. Those are who I get my plays from. So I think I'm good.